This is our fourth reflection of our Table Talk series, where we're going to take some time to dive deeper into Mark chapter 2, verses 18 to 22. As I was reading over this and just reflecting on, there's so many points here that Jesus is trying to make and come across to the disciples and to those who would question him and challenge him on things. And as I was reflecting on this and my own life and my own journey with God, I was thinking about when I was a kid growing up in church. And there was a time where almost any time I heard someone give a message of salvation and offer up the opportunity for people to give their lives to Jesus, I'd find myself raising my hand again, or rededicating my life to God, or coming to the front and feeling like, I was falling short, and there was this fear inside of me that I wasn't doing good enough, and that any little mistake that I made, had to start all over again, and I had to rededicate my life. I'd fallen away from God and walked off the path somehow. And then as I grew into my teen years and my walk with God and even my young adult life, I found myself still almost trapped in this mindset of how does it look like to follow Jesus, and what are the rules, and making sure I abided by those things and that my life looked like that, or I checked off the list of what it meant to be holy or seeking God, and even taking on some other people's convictions and what they thought it should look like as a follower of Jesus. And I found myself more and more burdened by those things. Those things didn't encourage me in my walk with Jesus and in getting to know God. They discouraged me. They created almost this chasm of like, God is so far away and he's just waiting and expecting me to fail. And when I do, there are these consequences. And as I thought more about that, and even during, last year or a year and a half ago when COVID hit, and all these things where I would prove my faith, prove my love for God in these actions and these things that I ticked off, all of those things were stripped away and we were asked to stay in our homes. And I really took a self-examination of where I was at with God and my relationship with Jesus and how I was loving him and what was I relying on. And I was relying so much on these external things, so much on these expectations of what it needs to look like to follow Jesus and to love God. And so as I was looking at these verses here in Mark chapter 2, verses 18 to 22, I was thinking about those things. And here some Jewish leaders and other disciples, they came and they encountered Jesus and they questioned him. Look, the rest of us are doing this. The rest of us are fasting right now. Why aren't your disciples fasting? And Jesus said, it's not the fasting that was bad. He addressed that it wasn't the thing itself, but there was a reason. He was doing something new, something different with the disciples, that he was taking his time to really teach them and to change them and to encounter them, and he was having a relationship with them. He was patient with them in their walk. They were a group of unusual disciples compared to what other groups looked like in that time that were learning, or scholars of the word or things like that. They looked so different and they were so new to this, and Jesus was so patient with them and said, we'll get there. But you need to be patient, and these things are important. Yes, fasting is important, and they'll do that. But right now, there's something else that matters. There's something else that I'm doing and working on in their lives individually, uniquely to them and who they are. And so this idea too, where he talks about, you don't put an unshrunk piece of cloth on a garment with a hole that needs to be patched up. My mom is this very talented seamstress. I grew up strolling fabric stores and craft stores, and so I know a thing or two about shrunk fabric. That was a question often asked by my mom when she was shopping for fabric. Is this pre-shrunk or not? Because if you didn't pre-shrink it, if you didn't wash it and dry it before, it would shrink a whole bunch. And what I discovered as I was actually talking to him recently about this, each different kind of fabric shrinks differently. Certain kind of fabrics shrink quicker or more or less, and they're all so unique in that. And it's important to do that before you attach them to something. And so when we try to put our ideas of what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus, what it looks like to trust him and to walk in a relationship with him, and these expectations and ideas that we sometimes put on ourselves, we then can get lost in that. And when we try to put on what God is trying to do uniquely to us, to our hearts, when we try to slap that on it and attach it, it's actually going to cause so much more harm than good. It says that tear in that hole, it's actually going to make it worse. And so as we just reflect on these verses today, and as we take some time to think about that and think about where you are with God, you know, if you still have questions and you're wondering, or you look at some Christians in your life or the Bible and you're so overwhelmed by all this information, by all these maybe expectations of who other people are, what other people do or look like, you know, just take a step back and know that God is so patient with you, and He has a unique plan and purpose for you. He has created you uniquely. And so just lean into that more. Just trust Him with that. Give that over to Him. And if you've been around for a while and you've trusted God with your life, but maybe you found yourself slipping into feeling like a failure, you know, with this, and this, or these expectations of, you know, I thought it'd be a lot further along in my walk with God, or whatever it is, just take that moment to step back and maybe view God a little differently, that He cares so much more about your heart and who you are, and that internal transformation, than making sure you check off all these things on the list of what these expectations are and what that looks like. So I just encourage you to take some time to read over these verses again, and the point that Jesus is really getting to make, and let Him do that new thing inside of your heart today.